Ever get that feeling like a song just yanks you into a whole different world? Like you're not just hearing the music, you're living it, breathing it.
Oh, absolutely. Music has this amazing power to give you a glimpse into someone else's reality. Their thoughts, their experiences, all laid bare.
Totally. And sometimes those realities, they can be pretty raw, pretty intense. And that's what we're diving into today. A track that throws you right into the heart of 90s street life, crime, hustle, the whole nine yards. So yeah, buckle up because this one gets real.
I think it's really important to remember, though, we're not here to glamorize anything, right? We're dealing with serious issues here. The goal is to understand, not to judge.
Exactly. So think of this deep dive like a time machine, taking us back to 1994. It was the golden age of hip-hop, right? And the music, it wasn't shying away from the hard stuff. It was raw, it was real, and it gave a voice to communities that were facing some serious challenges. We're not going to name the song just yet, keep it a little mysterious for now, but picture this, okay? Our narrator, he kicks things off by talking about his buddy Inf. Seems Inf is doing time on a weapons charge, supposed to be back on the streets by 93. And you get this feeling right from the jump that prison is almost like a revolving door in this world.
Yeah, and you instantly pick up on the narrator's priorities. This line always gets me ready to get this paper, G. It's all about the money, even if it means, coloring outside the lines a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not even just about, like, wanting fancy things. It feels more desperate than that. My pocket's looking kind of tight, he says, and I'm stressed, yo. And then when his friend suggests, hey, maybe you should think about a bulletproof vest just in case, our guy just brushes it off. No need for that. Just grab the fucking gat. Yeah. Gives me chills just thinking about it.
It's chilling how desensitized he is to it all. It's like they're talking about what they're having for lunch, not, a life or death situation. That whole casual approach to violence, it really speaks volumes about the environment they're living in. Danger is like their constant companion, so emotional detachment, it becomes a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. What gets me is the way he talks about violence. Like it's just some kind of skill to master. He tells his partner, treat it like boxing, stick and move, stick and move. It's almost like he's giving tips on a video game, not something with real-life consequences.
Right. There's this coldness there, this lack of empathy that's just unsettling. And that detachment, it just gets even more intense as the song goes on. He says, I've been robbing motherfuckers since the slave ships. Now, obviously, that's hyperbole, but it feels like more than just a throwaway line. You know what I mean? It's pointing to something way deeper.
Okay, so let's unpack that robbing since the slave ships line a little bit, because it feels like he's directly connecting his actions to this legacy of injustice. Like he's trying to maybe not justify, but explain his actions.
Yeah.
By putting them in this bigger historical context.
Absolutely. He's drawing a direct line between the struggles of his ancestors and his own experience. Like he's saying, look, this is just the world we live in. It speaks to this cycle of inequality that's been passed down for generations. That's what makes it so powerful, so thought-provoking.
It really is. But at the same time, we got to remember, this isn't about condoning his actions at all. It's about understanding how complex this situation is, the factors that lead to these cycles of poverty and crime.
100%. And the lyrics don't shy away from those consequences either. As the song unfolds, we see who the narrator is targeting, and it's pretty bleak. We're talking men, women. He even talks about robbing a mother, taking her #1 mom pendant.
Wow. It's like any ounce of empathy has just been completely overshadowed by this desperate need for cash.
Yeah, pure survival mode. But even in this grim reality, you see these glimpses of him trying to rationalize what he's doing. Like when he says, Mom Duke ain't giving me shit. It's like he's shifting the blame onto his upbringing, don't you think?
Right, trying to find an excuse.
Yeah.
Or when he calls himself crazier than a bag of fucking angel dust, He's saying he's not in control, just a product of his environment.
Textbook case of self-justification, right? By painting himself as a product of his surroundings, it's a way to distance himself from the consequences of his actions.
So we've got this blend of, desperation, a messed up sense of justification, and this really chilling lack of empathy. And it's about to get even more intense because the lyrics are about to get into the specifics of the violence.
Yeah, he doesn't exactly hold back, does he? Talking about shootings, leaving people for dead. Man, that phrase dirt nap, it just sends chills down my spine.
It's brutal, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that those consequences, they're not just some abstract idea, They ripple outwards, hitting the victims the hardest, of course, but also impacting the perpetrator, even society as a whole. It's a big deal.
Big time. He might think he's operating outside the system, but in reality, He's just fueling this cycle of fear and violence. And that affects everyone, right? It erodes trust, it deepens divisions, reinforces negative stereotypes. Nobody wins.
Nobody wins, that's for sure. Okay, I think we've danced around the whole mystery guest thing for long enough. Time to let the cat out of the bag, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. This track, this raw, unfiltered journey into the heart of 90s street life. We're talking about Gimme the Loot by the one and only Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls.
The man, the myth, the legend. Biggie, he came straight out of the Brooklyn Projects, early 90s. And his lyrics, let's just say they weren't for the faint of heart. He brought this gritty, in-your-face realism to the game, laying bare the violence and the complexities of the world he knew. No sugarcoating.
And Gimme the Loot, even with all the over-the-top violence, even the dark humor, it became one of his most iconic tracks. But here's where it gets really heavy. Biggie himself, he was gunned down, just a few years after this song came out. Life imitating art in the most tragic way possible.
It's crazy, isn't it? A real reminder that the violence he talked about, it wasn't just for show, it was his reality. And it's sad because it brings up this debate that's been going on forever. Does music like this, does it reflect reality or does it glorify it? Or maybe, is it some kind of social commentary? What do you think?
It's the million-dollar question, right? I mean, on one hand, you've got this raw, unfiltered look into a world that most people wouldn't even be able to imagine, let alone experience. But then there's always that worry. Does hearing this kind of explicit stuff, does it desensitize people to violence? Maybe even, inspire it?
It's been a huge debate for decades, and honestly, there's no easy answer. Art, it often acts as a mirror, reflecting the good, the bad, and the ugly. Maybe the real question isn't about censoring art, but about how we engage with it, Can we listen with an open mind and use it to start a dialogue, or do we just get sucked in and risk, making things worse?
It's about being mindful, right? About listening with a critical ear. So I want to hear from you, the listener. How does hearing this raw, unfiltered perspective, how does it make you think differently about the music you listen to? Do artists even have a responsibility when it comes to putting these kinds of themes out there?
Those are some big questions, and here's another one for you to chew on. Think about how much hip-hop has evolved since Gimme the Loot dropped. Do you think we're still seeing those same themes? The crime, the poverty, the violence? Or have things shifted? I mean, what does that say about us? About how we're dealing with these issues? What stories are we choosing to tell?
It's a lot to process, man. But that's what these deep dives are all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting uncomfortable, pushing those boundaries, and coming out the other side with hopefully a new perspective. Now, this song, it throws us right into the action, no doubt. We're seeing things from the point of view of the, perpetrator, the one calling the shots. But what about the victims?
That's right. We can't forget about them. Their stories are just as important, if not more so. And unfortunately, they're often the ones who get silenced, overlooked.
Exactly. And it's one thing for us to sit here and analyze lyrics, unpack the motivations of the person committing the crime. But it's equally important to remember that there are real people on the other end of that violence. Real people with real lives, real families.
That's what makes this conversation so complex, isn't it? There are no easy answers, no clear-cut heroes and villains. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and frankly, it forces us to confront some hard truths about ourselves and the world we've created.
Yeah, no, you said it, man. It's messy, and it's real, and it's something, we can't just ignore.
Exactly. And as we start to, wrap up our deep dive here on Gimme the Loot, I think the thing that really sticks with me is how music, it can be more than just like background noise, right?
Yeah.
It can really make you think about things in a different way. Start a conversation. 100%. And I think Gimme the Loot, it's a perfect example of that. It's raw, it's unflinching, and it really forces us to confront some hard realities about like crime, about poverty, about the choices people make when they feel like they have no other options.
And maybe, just maybe, by listening to these stories, even the ones that make us kind of uncomfortable, maybe that's how we start to actually change things.
Yeah.
By understanding the root causes of these issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's not enough to just analyze the words, right? Or try to figure out what's going on in the artist's head. We got to take that understanding and actually do something with it.
Exactly. We need to ask ourselves, what can we do differently? What can we do to create a world where a song like this, it becomes a history lesson and not a reflection of what's happening right now?
It's a tall order, that's for sure. But I'm an optimist, I really believe that art, that music, it can open our minds. It can inspire real change.
I hear that. And hey, big thanks to you, our listeners, for coming along on this journey with us. Remember, it's not about having all the answers, right? It's about being brave enough to ask the tough questions. So until next time, keep those minds open. Keep the conversation going.